Okay, so good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon.
Today is the 16th of April, 2020, and you very kindly accepted to do another recording for offering reflections on Dhamma in this time of global seclusion, if I may say. So the first question was from someone who was asking who is homebound, like a lot of people, and using their time to do some formal practice, both in the morning and in the evening at home, and wondering how to use this time of seclusion at home, a lot of free time, how to use that to best benefit in terms of Dhamma.
This is, the opportunities we have to reflect on the way it is, because meditation, Buddhist meditation, really is awakening to reality, observing just the way it is. And for each one of us, each separate human being, it's not going to be the same. You're going to feel one way, I'm going to feel another. But this awareness, mindfulness, is the ability to use, to observe, to be the witness of the way it is, the uncritical, unjudgmental witness of the way it is. So we use terms like it's like this phrase, it is the way it is, it's like this, just as a reminder, because we tend to, when, each moment of our life, we tend to be caught in just reactivity, in habits of reaction. So if we're feeling lonely or bored or frightened or whatever, then we have ways of just reacting to it, either through suppression or indulging into it. But in terms of opportunities in where you're more bound, restricted in movements, you can't just go off to the restaurant or the bar or go visit your friends. The best you can do is phone your friends, from your flat. But it's also the opportunity to observe that frustration, the way we don't like to be with ourselves usually. We like to be caught into the worldly dhammas, talking with friends, enjoying a nice meal in a restaurant, watching television, going, on holiday trips and tourism, and ways of distracting ourselves endlessly, which are habit patterns we've developed since the culture. Worldly culture is that's the way we've been conditioned. And the Buddha, made it very clear. His teaching, just in 2 sentences, it describes the whole way of dealing with it. It's sape sankhara anicca, all conditions are impermanent. Sape dhamma anatta, Dhamma is not self. And so these 2 sentences are very profound and quite simple, but it's not a complicated teaching, and it points the way to wake up to reality, to realize Dhamma for yourself individually, rather than just be caught in the momentum of habits that you developed from childhood up to your present age at this time. So you just, this sense of being alone, of loneliness, of frustration, of fear, all these emotions arise that we tend to ignore in an ordinary daily life experience, because we have developed ways of just distracting ourselves from reality by going to some fantasy world or nostalgia for the past, or having a drink, or smoking a cigarette, or doing something to get our minds off the reality of here and now, because the Dhamma is timeless. And timelessness is something that the intellect, the thinking mind, can't possibly understand. You know, when we try to figure out what timelessness is, no time. Time is a fantasy, is imagination, is the creation of the human mind. Then you try to figure out what is my experience now. You know, how did I get here? What is it? The reality of the worldly numbers, the material world seems much more real than just the concept of timelessness and pure awareness. So, you know, the intellect, remember, is a condition factor. It's not personal. It's conditioned. You know, from the time you're born, you're kind of programmed to see reality as I am the physical body. The body is me. I am a boy or a girl. I get your identities. You're not born with any identity. Like a newborn baby is a conscious form, human form in consciousness. But it has no name, no identity, and it doesn't think. It doesn't have a developed thinking. We develop thinking later in life. We think in childhood. And we believe the thoughts that we create in our minds. So like meditation is an opportunity to observe, you know, and not criticizing thinking or telling you shouldn't be thinking, because that would be an impossibility. But to be the awakened awareness of thought is like this, whether it's a good thought or a bad thought or a boring thought, whether it's true, false, big or small, the size, the quality, the condition of the thought is not the issue, because we reflect on it. It is something, it is a condition that arises and ceases. So by reflecting in this way, we begin to break through the conditioned kind of automatic habitual patterns we've developed in our lifetime, to be able to witness them, to be the Bhutto or the Buddha, the witness to reality is the Buddha. So by being mindful, we're taking refuge in the Buddha, in the witnessing position of the observer, uncritical, unjudgmental observer of conditioned phenomena as it arises and ceases. And then we have the insight into the fact that when the thinking ceases, when emotion ceases, when conditions cease, what remains is peace, is conscious awareness. Awareness doesn't cease, you know, but the conditions that we're aware of arise and cease, and this constant reflection on this reality, and don't take it, you know, don't believe me in just the verbal sense, but the whole point of the Buddhist teaching is to realize this for yourself. It's something that each one of us can know for ourselves and not just believe somebody who gives a particular Dharma reflection on a certain day.
Okay, thank you for that. And there's another question, that's a couple of questions someone was asking around fear, because this situation where people are cooped up in unusual conditions, and then the threat of this disease that people can die from brings up fear. So they're asking, what is the nature of fear? What is this emotion that arises?
Fear is a condition. It's not ultimate reality. And for example, right now, the future When you think about the future with the coronavirus, and when will it cease? When will it go away? Because we don't want it. We don't want the fear of getting this disease and the restrictions and all the news of worldwide. There's no escape. There's no place on planet Earth you can go to really get away from it. So when you're in your own flat, your apartment, with your own body and mind, fear is a kind of primal. And basically it's the animal realm, the mammalian side of our conscious experience, where self-preservation. There's a lot to fear as a human individual form. Our bodies are quite delicate, easily damaged, can be eaten by other animals, and meteorites can come from outer space, and cyclones, hurricanes, coronaviruses. There's so many possible conditions that could hurt us or harm us or kill us. So fear is not to see it as some kind of personal flaw or that you should get rid of it, but recognize fear is like this. It's about the future. If there's a tiger chasing you right in the present moment, then that fear is self-preservation. You don't have time to think and create fear. You just manage to do the best you can to escape the attack from the tiger. But when you're in your flat alone in a condominium in a nice place like Switzerland or any other country, and you have guards and burglar alarms and all kinds of safety mechanisms to prevent burglars or robbers or bandits or strangers coming into your space. We can sit in our comfortable condo and feel very frightened, because what we're doing, sitting in our flat, is we're thinking, and the future is the unknown. You want to hear the good. Tell me everything is okay. Tell me everything is going to be all right. That this virus is going to go away very soon, never come back, and the American economy will get back to normal. Even better, it'll flourish beyond belief. You can't really believe how good the economy is going to be in the future. This is what we can do in our time alone by ourselves. And that's just trying to suppress fear, resist the fear that you feel of the unknown. Because coronavirus is frightening. Let's face it. Just the news you get from the media and from the authorities, it's very unsettling, and it's like this. So we can be aware when we hear the news on the journalists, the news broadcasters, and so forth. This is when we hear this kind of news, we feel like this. So we can try to pretend everything's going to be okay, but that's just, kind of fooling yourself. You don't know that. None of us know that. At this moment in time, tomorrow is the unknown. The reality of here and now is that tomorrow is what I don't know. But you can be aware that you don't know the future. That's the way to realize the future is what you don't know, because it's a concept of time. Believing in the material world as our reality, then time is about conditions, about sankharas, about phenomena that changes. If you're born, you're going to die. If it begins, it ends. The reality of that sape sankhara anicca, all conditions are impermanent, is true. You can, as you pursue your reflection on the impermanence of your own thoughts, feelings, your own physical existence is impermanent. What you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, every emotion, everything that is happening here and now is impermanent. And what isn't impermanent, what isn't changing and conditioned by birth and death is awareness, conscious awareness. So that's why mindfulness is the path to the deathless. In the Dhammapada, the verse, the mindfulness is the path to the deathless, heedlessness is the path to death. So mindfulness is here and now. It's about the present reality of here and now is like this. And you can see the tendency to resist it or to grasp it and indulge in the feelings that arise. And that's the world that you create. That's the conditioned world that you believe is your reality, that is your separate self, your ego. And that ego is frightened. The ego is easily frightened because that's one of the conditions of the ego is to resist. And notice that the way when we experience fear, there's an incredible resistance to it. We want to, how can I get rid of it? How can I get rid of it permanently? And we claim it as some kind of personal flaw, like I shouldn't be afraid, I should be brave. These are ideals about what one should be. But fear is kind of primal to the conditions that we're experiencing here and now. And so it arises and ceases. And instead of resisting it and trying to get rid of it and claiming it as some kind of personal ownership to it, recognize it, welcome it, see it, observe it. It's like this. Fear is like this. And in that way, that which is aware is not frightened. Your emotion might be frightening, might be fear itself, but the awareness of fear, aware of the emotion, is not frightened. It never gets frightened, never gets angry, never is greedy. So, the human condition is one, we're thinking creatures. We're caught in mental conditioning. And this is a great gift in many ways. It's also a curse, is that we tend to believe what we're thinking. We believe in ourselves as a separate personality, as an individual. We believe in the conditioning we have in our own cultural conditioning, our social conditioning, our religious conditioning. We believe in it. We don't question it. Usually, we're caught in the from the early childhood into what we're told by our mother, our father, by the neighbors, by relatives, by the priests, rabbis, and so forth. We don't question it when we're children. We tend to believe what we're told. And there's, for all of us, there's nothing seems more real than I am this physical body. I've got to live with this body. And it's an old body now. So, and the conditioning, the cultural, personal conditioning happened when I was a child. And kind of cathected, kind of formed its identity in a kind of permanent style in teenage and early 20s. And so that, this is why we can't really believe it, because it's an illusion. Some of it's good, some of it is not very good, but it is a condition that arises and ceases. So we get back to the constant refrain of sabbe sankarani cha, all conditions are impermanent. And then the second statement of these two statements made by the Buddha, Sabbe, Dhamma, and all. Dhamma is not a person, not a separate entity, not a personality, not a separate force in the universe. It's not a kind of a patriarchal God in the sky. It's reality here and now, and so we awaken to reality through this kind of ability to reflect on the way things are. The insight into suffering is to let go of it. But to let go of suffering, it doesn't mean that you just resist it or get rid of it. Because suffering is the first noble truth. You know, the Buddha's first sermon was the first truth he announced to his disciples was there is suffering. So suffering is something to really understand, and to understand something you have to accept it. It's like this, suffering, feeling lonely, feeling frightened is like this. And that then the question is, so that which is aware of suffering isn't suffering. The condition that you're aware of, if you grasp it, when you grasp it, then you start feeling I'm suffering. But if you're aware of the condition of suffering and not grasp it or let it go, then suffering ceases. It has no grounds to grow in and to perpetuate itself. And so this sense of letting go, and this is a good mantra for people at this time, is this mantra of letting go. And this is an insight into the Four Noble Truths. To see whatever you're feeling, you know, whether you're trying to convince yourself everything's going to be okay, or everything's going to get worse, and then you can imagine, create a scenario, you know, where it's total destruction, and all human beings die from the coronavirus. You know, you can take it to one extreme, or that it will disappear tomorrow just magically, and everything's going to be okay. You know, the desire mind wants to believe everything's going to be okay. And that's what we want to hear. You know, we say, and I ask you, how are you? You say, okay, or fine. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear really how you're frightened and lonely and not feeling well. You know, it's more of a rhetorical answer is, how are you, Ajahn Sumedho? I'm fine. You are expecting me to go into details about, you know, the feelings I'm experiencing in the present. And Ajahn Sumedho's okay, it makes you feel good. And if I say Ajahn Sumedho isn't okay, then that you can create a sense of worry, anxiety, fear about the future, just by thinking the fact that Ajahn Sumedho is not okay. And so it's as simple as that. Who is observing this? Who is aware of this way the thinking mind operates? You know, it goes from one extreme to everything's going to be perfect, and the virus is going to disappear, and we'll all be happy. Is one, you know, that means everything's going to be okay. Or we can hear, well, we don't know, you know, this virus could last. I've heard reports that we're going to be isolated in our houses and apartments until 2022. No, that's not what you want to hear, is it? Nobody wants to hear that. But that's a possibility. You know, the future is the unknown. You know, it magically might disappear in the next day or so. But that's very unlikely. What is likely, what is happening right now, is the thinking process is like this. Whether it's positive and wishful thinking or fantasy or just anxiety, paranoia, fear, loneliness.
Is there any reflection that can be used as a skillful way to counteract fear, or do you just recommend just acknowledging fear as it's like this right now as the best thing to do?
Acknowledge fears like this, it's impermanent, it's not self, it's not some kind of personal defect that, some kind of neuroses that you attach to, but it's the way it is. It's like this at this time, and like embracing it, or stop resisting it, stop trying to get rid of it, because that's the power of fear, is that makes you want to run away or resist it. None of us like to feel frightened, and so living in Thailand where people believe in the reality of ghosts, you're dealing with a society brought up in the belief, the conditioned belief that ghosts exist. So ghosts you can imagine anywhere. Living in Buddhist monasteries, living in forests, there's ghosts in the jungle, ghosts under the trees, ghosts in the graveyards, the charnel grounds. And Luang Por Chah used to, in the years that I lived with Luang Por Chah, he would, because I didn't believe in ghosts, I didn't have that kind of fear conditioning. Then he'd get me to take samaneras, who are usually boys under, in their teenage boys, out into the graveyards and charnel grounds to spend the night, and I'd set them up in, quite separate from each other. But by the morning, they were all huddled together because they interpreted the sound of the forest, animals walking on leaves, or the movement of the wind as ghosts, where I didn't. I think that's probably a squirrel or a rat, or, you can imagine it could be a snake if you want to, something threatening. But I never imagined ghosts. It's impossible. I've tried to believe in ghosts, but I can't do it because, the early conditioning was there aren't any. Where the samaneras, the novices, their early conditioning is ghosts are real, real threat to human existence. And so, this is, are there ghosts, or aren't there ghosts? Do I have to make a statement and tell everybody there aren't any ghosts? I can't do that anymore. I used to be able to say with conviction, that's just superstition, there aren't any ghosts. But I can't say there are either. I don't know. But there's a knowing of I don't know. The awareness, when you don't know. That's awareness. It's a simple reality of here and now. And, I can, prefer my social conditioning to somebody else's, but that's just ego, that's a sense of I am, my thoughts, my social background, my cultural background, my family background, and it's better than somebody else's. That's all what they call conceptual proliferation. It's just the way we've been taught to think and react and create ourselves as a real kind of permanent personality. But in terms of conscious awareness, we're all the same. If we're looking for the point of equality among all sentient beings, what we share in common with all sentient beings, whether it's all human beings or animal realm or whatever, the whole universe, is consciousness. It's not personal. It's not my consciousness is different from yours. What I'm conscious of is different than yours. But the consciousness of here and now, this reality, this ability to apperceive rather than just to perceive or conceive. So thinking is we conceive. perception is a function of the senses. And what overrides both the perceptions and conceptions is awareness, consciousness, which is aware that all conditions arise and cease. They have no personal kind of permanency of any sort. And then the insight into letting go allows us to prove this, not just to accept this because the Buddha said so. It's not like we have to believe in impermanence. It's not a belief, it's a recognition of the way things actually are that you can see for yourself.
Thank you very much, Paul.